We have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough.
Dear Mr. Massa, I'm just trying to mind my own business. What's the matter? It's just another day, another black king captured. I'm about to lose my brain, stuck inside this ghetto rapture. I got a lot of smoke. If you want it, you can have it. They want a hat trick, but this is black girl magic. Ain't talking about the kind that'll make you disappear, but I'm talking about the power of the melanin within. Ain't looking for trouble, but I'ma say this one time. I put 2 dukes up if you try to touch mine. We still want justice for Samir and Trayvon. You say you don't see color, but racism ain't blind. They targeting little kids whose skin look just like mine. So I'm paranoid, it's a war zone outside. And I'm a black queen, so if you ask me to step out of my car, you gon' have to snatch me. Cause I ain't going no damn well. Had to spend my whole life living unfair. Ancestors got my back and they right here. You can never understand, it's a nightmare. Living in my black shoes by the black rules. You can keep your handshake, I don't dap coons. The white man to go nuts if he can't shoot. But you all on his side like a damn fool. Make it make sense.
We are oppressed.
Queen.
We are exploited. We are downtrodden.
Make it make
Queen.
sense.
We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights.
Ahmadiyyah.
So the only way we're going to get some of this
Ahmadiyyah.
oppression and exploitation
Queen.
away from us or aside from us is come together
Queen.
against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your
Ahmadiyyah.
hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin?
Ahmadiyyah.
Parents, pay attention to the books, the school system, even to your little children. Lies mixed with wisdom. His skin too bright, so he was blind to the prison. My skin just right, so I collide with division. You trying to pray to God, but we tired of religion. No savior saving, we got to save our savings. We used to pay miss, how we gon' make the slave rich? But who's to blame, and tell me why you complaining? We need a team effort just to rule the nation. Like a bad relationship, missing communication. We missing moderation. They trying to get a poison to my population. No reparations. I'm getting tired of Satan.
We are oppressed.
Queen.
I'm getting tired of waiting.
We are downtrodden.
Queen.
We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights.
Ahmadiyyah.
So the only way we're going to get some of this
Ahmadiyyah.
oppression and exploitation.
Queen.
In my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen. Why you hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans? I got dreams like King Luther, shed blood like Kunsa. You ain't helping my people, I ain't got nothing to say to ya. I want all the smoke like hookah. Talking reparations, America won't be great until they give us compensation. I'm like, I'm the hottest right now. See a bunch of lames out here trying to jock on my style. They be doing too much. I'm the queen, it's too easy. It's like they all in Popeyes, how they be talking so greasy. I just sit back and laugh while these haters get mad. So nefarious how they don't want my pockets with cheddar. I tell them they can do better. These snakes in the grass can leave a bite on your ass, cause y'all be trusting too fast. I got my foot on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threat.
This is the sound of Eric Malcolm.
It's a cut on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threat. Running through every challenge like a relay, break no sweat. It's a cold game, so I got that blanket with me. Now that my people awaken, ain't no going to sleep. I do not play by my piece, this time I'm playing for keeps. You talking slick, but when I see you like them ends, we gon' meet. And I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen, why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen, why Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got...
This is the sound of Image.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again to the Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur TV show. I'm your host, Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur, and this is your second morning wake-up call. So as you're coming in, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to click that notification bell and click the word all so you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. All right. And if you don't like what the Queen is cooking, you already know what to do. Okay, so don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Dr._A_Shakur, TikTok at Dr. A Shakur, and Twitter at DGoddess27. Let's get into it. Terry Hinton, Nasja, Miss Evie is here, Claudette, Vincent Aaron from the UK. All right, Jima's in the house, Courtney J, Buckhorst DC, the Prince of Paraphernalia is here. Okay, Darnell, Jordan, All Hell Nah. Ty Ingram is here. Okay, so let's get into it. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. So let me write this down so I don't forget. Hold on. So Prince of Paraphernalia and Courtney J, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you two are the ones that asked to be moderators. Hey, Dragon Lily, I'm going to make you all moderators after this broadcast. Okay, pay attention. Hello, Charm. Odd Negroes Officials is here. All right. Shy Hannah, G from the land. Let's get into it, because this is all nefarious. Now, I'm sure you all have heard, and if you haven't, you're about to. Hey, Darnell, about this nefarious prosecutor who has been disbarred because she was covering up, protecting, and working in concert and unison with this nefarious, corrupt detective by the name of Roger Gabluski. Or how do you say his name? Gabluski. Yeah, that's him. So anyway, let's talk about it. Because before all of this came about, back in 2017, there was a Black district attorney named Mark A. Dupree Sr. who spoke out against him and wanted there to be an investigation into him. So let's go back before we go forward. Black prosecutor wants probe of white retired Kansas detective in wrongful conviction of Black inmate. This came out in November of 2017. Now, a Kansas prosecutor has asked for help in investigating a retired white police detective accused of preying on Black women for sex over decades and pursuing the wrongful murder conviction of the son of one of the women. Now, this is very important because here's the thing. It was alleged that some of these women that he wanted to mess around with, this corrupt detective, if they didn't do what he wanted them to do, that he would put charges on their sons. Okay, so just low down and dirty, and the prosecutor would help him. Now, in March 14th of 2017, District Attorney Mark A. Dupree Sr. spoke at a news conference in Kansas City, Kansas, after asking in October that charges be levied against that charges against Lamont McIntyre, convicted in a 1994 double homicide, be dismissed because of manifest injustice. Okay, Dupree was establishing a conviction integrity unit within his office. He was also at the time calling for an investigation into the now retired police detective Roger Golubsky, okay, that led the investigation against McIntyre, who was in prison for 23 years. Now, I want y'all to think about this. 23 years on a conviction. But here's the thing. Some would say, and by some, I mean people who don't like people who look like me, they will make all these excuses and they'll talk about how so many of our people in prison. Well, how many of them are there under wrongful convictions? How many of them were framed? How many of them had charges stacked on them and they really didn't do anything? I'm sure there's plenty, okay? Meanwhile, you have people like Brock Turner, who absolutely committed nefarious crimes and don't get any prison or jail time because, hey, they have a bright future ahead. Okay, Brooke Skylar Richardson, who murdered a baby, stabbed it, burned it in the backyard. She didn't go to prison. The only thing they found her guilty of was something about abuse of a corpse, for which I think she may have gotten 6 months in jail. That's it. She may have even gotten probation. I can't remember. That was in 2018. But what I'm saying is people do nefarious things and don't even go to prison as they should. And they're guilty of these things. But then you have innocent people of my skin tone who go to prison for decades for things they didn't even do just because some racist devil wanted to put them there. Okay, please pay attention. Now, the district attorney, Mark Dupree, who was, by the way, the first Black elected district attorney in Kansas, noted in an interview that the Kansas City Police Chief, Terry Ziegler, had said there should be an investigation of former Detective Roger Golubsky, who numerous residents say wielded his power to terrorize the Kansas City, specifically the Kansas City Black community, for decades. Okay? They say when the chief of police says something like that, then I have to look at this retired detective who was with the police department for 30 plus years. Now, the prosecutor that was elected that year, or the year before all of this, had recently requested assistance from the Kansas Bureau of Investigation to look into Golubsky's conduct, and discussions are currently occurring on how to proceed. So they started this whole investigation into his nefarious allegations back in 2017. Now, Dupree shocked those attending a court hearing on October the 13th when he said that there had been a manifest injustice in the conviction of Lamont McIntyre for the 1994 murders of two men when he was just a teenager. Okay, he was like 17 years old. A judge let McIntyre go free after 23 years in prison. Do you know how mad I would be? Yeah, I would be so mad. I would be singing that song by Lil Durk, Pay Me Back in Blood. Okay, let me continue. No physical evidence linked McIntyre to the crime, and he did not even know the victims. The case rested on contradictory and coerced testimony that police and prosecutor at the time allegedly knew were false. Now, in the October 13th, 2017 file photo, Lamont McIntyre, who was in prison for 23 years for a 1994 double murder in Kansas that he always maintained that he didn't commit, he finally walked out of a courthouse in Kansas City, Kansas with his mother, Rosie McIntyre, after the district attorney, Mark A. Dupree, Sr., dropped all of the charges. Now, he was, at the time, Dupree was establishing a conviction integrity unit within his own office, saying that essentially a watchdog that works, this is what it's supposed to be, a watchdog unit that worked to identify, and correct false convictions. McIntyre's mother, Rose, said in an affidavit that years before her son was convicted, Golubsky coerced her into sexual acts in his office and then harassed her for weeks, often calling her 2 or 3 times a day before she moved and changed her phone number. She believes Golubsky retaliated against her son because she spurned his later advances. Isn't that something? You know that old saying, you lie down with dogs and you wake up with fleas? Yeah. She said he coerced her into those acts. She never should have done them in the first place. Honey, he would have made me do anything, honey. I promise you that. All right. It would have been me or him, literally. You're not making me do anything, period. As far as being a predator is concerned, I'm going to defend myself at all costs. But anyway, I digress. Affidavits also accused the prosecutor in the case, Tara Moorhead, of intimidating witnesses who told her that McIntyre was not a killer and then not informing the defense about those statements. And the presiding judge of Wyandotte County, District Judge J. Dexter Burdett, had a romantic relationship with Moorhead before the trial that neither disclosed at the time. So the judge was sleeping with the prosecutor, and the prosecutor was accused of intimidating witnesses and hiding evidence from the defense. But she's in cahoots with the judge because that's her boyfriend, boo thing, or whatever. So this is what they were doing. I want you all to pay attention. But meanwhile, they're sitting up here talking about Fonnie Willis, okay, and Nathan Wade. Please pay attention. Now, Golubsky, Moorhead, and Burdett have never been disciplined over these issues. All three either declined or did not respond to requests for comments. Golubsky retired from law enforcement a year later. Moorhead became a federal prosecutor. Burdett still sits on the bench. Now, in the wake of the McIntyre case, Dupree has been working to establish early next year a conviction integrity unit within the department. Okay, so we're going to skip past this because this was all in 2017, okay, when all of this came out. Now let's talk about Lamont McIntyre, who spent the 23 years in prison. Wrongful conviction. Lamont McIntyre stepped into the sunshine as a freed man for the first time in 23 years on October 13th of 2017. An innocent man. He spent more than half of his life in prison. And here's the thing. It's sad because he was 17 when he went. He got out 23 years later, so he spent more time in prison than he spent free. Okay? This is awful. An innocent man, he spent more than half his life in prison. But his release was about much more than how he'd been set up for a double homicide that he didn't even commit. 2 years after McIntyre's release, a federal grand jury began investigating the many claims that he brought to light. And then in September, 5 years later, FBI agents arrested one of the men who'd helped to send him to prison. Okay, and that was former Kansas City police detective Roger Golubsky. Golubsky is now awaiting trial on 6 counts of depriving 2 women of their civil rights by sexually assaulting and kidnapping them. Residents of Kansas City have called the U.S. Department of Justice to conduct a full-scale investigation of the police force. The case has generated so much attention that Jay-Z's Team Rock took out a full-page ad in the Washington Post urging a federal investigation and donated $1 million to the Midwest Innocence Project, which helped in McIntyre's case. All right, well, Jay-Z did something productive. But I digress. Long before all this attention, plenty of people in Kansas City understood all too well how it felt to live in a place where one cop or one prosecutor had enough unchallenged power to railroad a 17-year-old. Now, April 1994, that's when the double homicide occurred. Okay, so back then when he was a teenager, Lamont McIntyre wanted to be a comedian. People used to tell him how funny he was. They say, you remember like being 16 and 17 years old, you don't know, you don't have plans at that age. McIntyre said in an interview, you just kind of go with the flow. On April 15th of 1994, McIntyre skipped school. He'd been going to Donnelly College, enrolled in a program to get his GED. Tall and skinny, he had a part-time job sweeping floors at Fifi's Diner, where his mom, Rosie, worked. It was just around the corner from her house. Rosie was a single mother to Lamont and his 4 siblings. McIntyre had spent the previous night at his aunt's house, then a day hanging out with his cousins and watching TV, soap operas and all of that. Now, 2 of his aunts and another 2 cousins later testified that Lamont stepped away from his aunt's house just a few times that day. Once when his aunt sent him to the store to get bread for breakfast, once to help his mother with something at her house from 9 to 10:30 a.m., and a couple of times later that afternoon to his other aunt's house about a block away to call cabs for uncles visiting from out of town. Now, at 2 that afternoon, he was about a mile and a half away from Hutchings Street, where someone fatally shot 2 men. 21-year-old Daniel Quinn, who everyone called Little Don, and 34-year-old Donald Ewing, named Donnie, or known as Donnie, who were sitting in a blue Cadillac DeVille. Little Don's cousin, Nico Quinn, was outside her house and saw the shooter. Quinn and another witness, Ruby Mitchell, said the shooter was carrying a shotgun and wearing all black jeans, a black hat, and black shoes. McIntyre's cousins vividly remember what he was wearing that day. He was wearing khaki pants, a black t-shirt with white lettering on it, because he hadn't brought fresh clothes to his aunt's house, and they were kidding about him wearing the same clothes for 2 days. He was also wearing a ball cap. One cousin remembered it saying Michigan, another remembered it as Georgetown. Later that afternoon, McIntyre's grandmother called him at his aunt's house and told him the police wanted to speak to him. Now, the only thing he could think of, McIntyre later testified, was that maybe he missed a court for a recent charge of drug possession, so he called his mom at Fifi's Diner. Rosie McIntyre went to pick him up, but as she drove by Fifi's again on the way to the police station, a police car was parked at the diner. Rosie stopped and introduced herself. The police told her they just needed to talk to her son for about 15 minutes. She says, I believed in the system. They said, give us 15 minutes, and I did. And I didn't never get my son. A wave of police cars descended on Fifi's diner, and one of them took Lamont to the station. That's where he met the man who would be central to all the victims in the case. Kansas City, Kansas police detective Roger Golubski. Golubski questioned McIntyre. Had he been in any gang fights? The answer was no. Did he know anyone who owned a blue lowrider? The answer was no. Where was he at 2 p.m.? McIntyre said he was at his aunt's house. Officers told McIntyre one of the guys who'd been shot was still alive at the hospital and had identified him as the shooter, which was all a lie. Nobody told him any such thing. McIntyre said that wasn't possible because he wasn't even there. McIntyre's aunts and cousins tried to talk to police, even going to the station a couple of times when someone took their names or where someone took their names, but later testified that no one ever contacted them. Now, at 8 p.m. on April the 15th of 1994, just 6 hours after the murders, Lamont McIntyre was advised of his rights and arrested for the crime. I want y'all to pay attention. When have the police ever, when have they ever solved a double homicide in 6 hours? In 6 hours? Eyewitness accounts. Let's talk about it. Earlier that afternoon, a different Kansas City, Kansas police officer was interviewing a witness named Ruby Mitchell, a 27-year-old single mother. Mitchell lived on Hutchins Street with her 3 sons. She was looking out the screen door at about 2 p.m. that day. She says, he came down the hill and then he stopped about halfway and picked up something. I guess he dropped the shell or something. I don't know. This is what she said about the shooter. And then he pumped the gun, and then he came to the car and he said something to the dudes. And then he just started shooting. Now, Mitchell's account was the same as that of Nico Quinn, the other witness. The gunman was in all black carrying a shotgun. He shot 3 or 4 times at the 2 men in the powder blue Cadillac DeVille. And then he walked away. He walked over the hill where he came from. Now, the officer asked Mitchell about the shooter's hair. It wasn't real short, she told him. It was slicked down, like an afro, but swept back. Now, was the shooter heavy or thin? The officer asked. He was thin, Mitchell said. There was one difference between Mitchell's account and Nico's account. Mitchell said the shooter looked like a man who tried to talk to her niece. That man's name was Lamont. The man was interested in Mitchell's niece. The man who was interested in Mitchell's niece was named Lamont Drain, though she didn't know the last name at the time, but he was out of town on the day of the murders. So she wasn't talking about Lamont McIntyre. Now, the officer spent just 4 minutes with Mitchell. Twice he asked her, could you recognize him again if you saw him? And both times she said yes. So later that day, Golubski went back to Ruby Mitchell's house, picked her up, and took her to the police station. Police were ready with a photo lineup of 5 pictures. Okay, now the standard is 6 pictures. When they do a photo lineup, they usually have about 6 pictures. Now, 3 of the men in the photographs were members of Lamont McIntyre's family. Lamont, his brother, and a cousin. His attorneys later called that unduly suggestive, meaning police were trying to get witnesses to choose Lamont out of the lineup. Now, Golubski's partner questioned her again. He asked her about the name she told them. She almost called out when she saw the man run down the hill. It was Lamont. She says it was Lamont, the person who tried to talk to my niece. Now, he asked her about the shooter that she had picked out of the pictures. Are you absolutely sure this is the party who did the shooting? She said yes. Who is this party? He asked. Lamont. You know his name? She paused and said yes. What is it? Mitchell paused again and said McIntyre. Now, Ruby Mitchell's her pauses are audible in the police recording of the interview. The first is just before she says the new Lamont's last name, because first she said it was Lamont Drain, but now she's saying it's Lamont McIntyre. Okay, so earlier in the day, she didn't know the last name of the man who tried to talk to her niece. The second is after the detective asked her for that name when she says McIntyre. Yeah, and also, mind you, the person that she was talking about, his last name was Drain, but she didn't know his name. So when she first told the police, she said Lamont. She would only find out later that his last name was Drain. Now, detectives ran with it. wrapping up a double murder in 6 hours. In police records for that from that night, Golubsky marked the case as cleared with Lamont McIntyre's arrest. Now let's talk about the confidential informants. Now here's the thing. It sounds to me like when she said it was Lamont, the person whom she didn't know the last name of, it sounds to me like when Golubsky went to visit her, he must have put something in her ear to get her to say that it was Lamont McIntyre. Okay, so McIntyre went on trial 5 months later in September of 1994. When Golubsky testified, he said that Ruby Mitchell's identification of Lamont McIntyre was backed up by confidential informants, sources from the streets who also mentioned Lamont McIntyre as the killer. Now, using confidential informants to solve cases was one of Golubsky's specialties. Okay, so the county prosecutor on the case, Tara Moorhead, was ready to help Golubsky with those informants. So before trial, Nico Quinn said Moorhead threatened to lock her up and to take her children if she didn't identify Lamont McIntyre as the killer. I want you all to pay attention to that. So they held this over this woman's head, so they would lock her up and take her kids if she didn't lie and say. And let me just put these thugs up on the screen real quick. Likes up, everyone. Please like and share. That's Roger Golubsky, and that's Tara Moorhead, the low-down, dirty, nefarious prosecutor who was working in cahoots with him. And that's the victim of their lies and the framing of Lamont McIntyre, who spent 23 years in prison for some BS that they just made up. So anyway, it goes on to say, in McIntyre's trial, Moorhead cited case law to show the judge and jury how Golubsky's use of anonymous sources was perfectly legal. McIntyre's aunts and cousins testified at the trial that he was with them on the day of the murders. But Moorhead peppered them with questions about why they didn't remember the times more precisely. She accused them of rehearsing their stories. Moorhead also told the jury, without offering any sort of proof, that McIntyre had a vendetta against the two men who were killed in the Cadillac. Where did she get that from? Well, she pulled it out of thin air. That's where she got it. McIntyre's attorney pointed out that police didn't get fingerprints off the shotgun shells. They didn't search McIntyre's home. They didn't find the shotgun. They didn't try to find the all-black clothes the shooter was wearing, okay, or test McIntyre's clothes. And why would they test his clothes? For gunpowder residue, okay? If you fire a gun, there's going to be blowback of residue on your clothing, on your hands, on your wrists, and all of that. So they didn't do any of that. And why didn't they do it? Because they knew they were lying. They were making this all up. They were trying to build this case, which was all fraudulent. And so they didn't need to test the real evidence, because had they done so, the real evidence would have, proven that they were lying. So police simply relied on the testimony of two witnesses, Nico Quinn and Ruby Mitchell, who were both coerced, by the way. Now, in his closing argument, McIntyre's attorney said the police asked Ruby Mitchell to look at a photo lineup, and she picked out a person who looked like the Lamont that she knew. Now, oops, she was wrong, McIntyre's lawyer said. She picked out the wrong Lamont. After a trial that lasted 4 days, the jury found Lamont McIntyre guilty of the double murders on Hutchins Street. He was 17 the day of the double murders, 18 the day he was convicted, saying, I don't believe this man. The judge told him to be quiet and then polled the jury. Okay, so Lamont shouted out, I don't believe him. I don't believe this man. One by one, all 12 jurors said guilty. In January of 1995, Lamont McIntyre was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms. Now, he said just 13 words. Judge, I would like to tell the court that I'm innocent. That's all. So McIntyre said, I think for the most part, I was shocked. Okay, at that time, I did have faith in the justice system, and I knew that I had nothing to do with the crime, or I wasn't responsible for the death of those 2 men. So I kind of expected to walk out of the courtroom that day. This is very sad to say, but some of our people are delusional. How do you have faith in this type of system? And even in 1994, we should have known not to have faith in this sort of system. We've seen the things that happened in the 50s and 60s, and even before that. So why do some Black people say that they depend or they believe in the justice system, a system that was built to work directly against us? So McIntyre didn't know that he had other reasons to not trust the justice system. For instance, the county prosecutor who brought his case had a previous romantic relationship with the judge, which is a conflict of interest, okay? And Lamont's attorneys later used that in his exoneration case. And McIntyre's court-appointed lawyer, Gary Long, had never tried a murder case in his life. Long had also been disciplined by the Kansas Supreme Court for mishandling his client's cases. Long was eventually disbarred years later, but this is who they had to defend Lamont McIntyre. Ineffective counsel, okay? That should have been part of his appeals process, and I'm sure it was, on the grounds of ineffective counsel. Now, McIntyre's first few years in prison were hell. He was so angry he never smiled, earning the nickname Muggs. He says, when I got convicted, man, I went in and I was so hurt and angry. So that first 5 years was like me being in a, I don't know, it was like a trance or shock or something. But McIntyre hung on to his innocence, using it like a crutch to keep him steady. And he met a man in prison who helped him return to his faith in God. He decided that his anger wasn't harming the people who put him in there. It was harming him. So he prayed, talked on the phone to family, worked out, and read about philosophers, spirituality, and Shakespeare. He also kept up with the news. From prison, McIntyre learned of events such as the Oklahoma City bombing, the O.J. Simpson case, President Bill Clinton's impeachment, Columbine, and more. He says, I wrote hundreds of letters a week to all different organizations, different types of media source outlets. I wrote Oprah Winfrey. I was writing all kinds of people, and I was sent a lot. And a lot of people responded, but a lot of people couldn't do anything for me. A lot of people said there was nothing they could do. On the outside, one of the murder witnesses who had given false testimony to the police, Nico Quinn, signed an affidavit 2 years after his conviction saying McIntyre didn't do it. But she failed in her efforts to help his family and to get him released. Now, County Judge Dexter Burdett, who had overseen the first trial, said he didn't believe her. McIntyre's luck finally changed one day around 2001 after he saw an article in Jet magazine about Centurion Ministries, a group dedicated to exonerating innocent men. Okay, McIntyre wrote a letter to the Centurion investigators. He says, I'm 100% innocent of the crime that I'm doing time for. I have been doing my time as best I can, and I've been trying to prove my innocence. I have no money, and I don't know where to go from here. So I'm asking for your help. If you could just look at my case, you would see that I shouldn't be here. That's how he met Jim McCloskey, the man who got him out of prison. Since founding Centurion Ministries in 1980, McCloskey has helped free 68 people from prison. After 8 years corresponding with McIntyre and reading the paper trail, McCloskey was convinced of McIntyre's innocence. He started work on the case in 2009. And let me just show you who McCloskey is. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. Thank you in advance. That's McCloskey right there. That's the man who worked to get him out. Okay. Now, McCloskey spent a lot of time knocking on doors and talking to people on the streets, to the Quinn family, Lamont McIntyre's family, Ruby Mitchell. Nico Quinn told him she believed the real killer was a 15-year-old kid working for the biggest drug dealers in Kansas City, Neil Edgar Jr., okay, and that's who she thought it was. And he denied any involvement in the double murders and has never been charged in connection with them. Well, of course he denied if he actually did it. McIntyre hired an attorney to try to get McIntyre's case back to court. They talked to the county district attorney about Golubsky and about the county prosecutor, Tara Moorhead, who had threatened Nico Quinn into testifying against McIntyre, saying, we went through chapter and verse. While we believe Lamont was innocent, Monster was guilty, and the misdeeds of Tara Moorhead, Roger Golubsky, he didn't take one note. He listened, didn't really ask any questions. It was quite obvious he could care less about what we had to say or what evidence that we had. This is all crazy. A manifest injustice. So in 2016, voters in Kansas City, Kansas elected a new district attorney, Mark Dupree. He was a 34-year-old Black defense lawyer who was also a pastor at Grace Tabernacle Church. He met with McCloskey and McIntyre's attorneys, and they got an exoneration hearing set for October 12th of 2017. It was supposed to last 7 days. Dupree knew that McIntyre's case very well. He'd even done some of his own investigating, and by the second day of the hearing, he'd heard enough. He went out to lunch alone to a cafeteria in the basement of a casino across the street from the courthouse, where he ordered chicken fingers and fries. And he says, and I only ate one chicken finger because I was very nervous, Dupree says. And I knew that I was about to tick off the establishment. Okay, and he knew that could bring dire consequences. Please pay attention. Now, Dupree was planning to do something that would change Lamont McIntyre's life and defy the entire entrenched political and legal power structure in Kansas City, Kansas. He said, I knew I was at the point where I had gotten the gall, right? And not being afraid of the political backlash that I knew was about to come my way. Dupree made a plan. He would go back across the street and advise Lamont's legal team to tell the judge they wanted to enter Lamont McIntyre's entire case into evidence. Dupree told the prosecutors not to object to it. Then Dupree would ask for the case to be dismissed, a strategy that was rarely used because it means that he's overturning a decision by his own office. So prosecutors don't tend to do that. Okay. Now, before he left the cafeteria that day, he wrote up a statement to read in court. He says, I've been presented with information regarding the identification of Mr. McIntyre in 1994 as the killer of Donnell Quinn and Donnie Ewing. Information that I believe was not available during the trial of a nature that I believe that had it been presented to the jury in the 1994 trial that convicted Mr. McIntyre, it may certainly have caused those jurors to have reasonable doubt as to Mr. McIntyre's guilt. It is because of this information and only this information that my office is requesting the court find that manifest injustice exists, that Mr. McIntyre should be granted an opportunity for a new trial. The judge granted a new trial. Dupree's next words were, Judge, on behalf of the state of Kansas and as a minister of justice and the chief law enforcement officer of this county, based on my investigation in this case, this office moves to dismiss the case. The courtroom erupted. He came into court and announced he's recommending that the convictions be vacated and the charges against Lamont be dismissed, according to McCloskey. Case over. It was unbelievable. So it was just such a moment of joy and relief that it's over. He was a free and exonerated man. It was also hard to believe because a prosecutor's decision to reverse an earlier case is very rare. It was like, I don't know, a moonshot, something from Mars coming down to Earth. This never happens. Now, in the days after his release, Lamont McIntyre said he planned to go to get his barber's license, finish his education, and follow his passions. But he wasn't the only one who had suffered needlessly for 23 years. Rosie McIntyre had 2 nervous breakdowns and still blames herself to this day. The day of the crime, I took my son to see what the authorities wanted. And they said, give him 15 minutes and I could get my son. So from that day on, 15 minutes did not come. So I relived that day each and every day of my life. I actually did the time with my son each and every day. Rosie McIntyre never doubted her son's innocence. She visited him once a month while he was incarcerated in 2 different Kansas prisons. In the years immediately after the murder, she even tried extreme things to get Lamont out, such as dressing as a man at night to go into the tough part of town where the murders happened, trying to find more information. She also made phone calls and wrote letters to the NAACP, 60 Minutes, Court TV, Sally Jesse Raphael, Queen Latifah, Montel Jordan. I didn't lose hope. I lost my nerves. I don't know how to really describe it, she says. It was so much hurting. It was hurt. It was pain. I mean, I was doing so much to try to free my own son till I broke down several times. This is all so sad. Now, McIntyre has played a significant role in her son's case. After Lamont was exonerated and released, his attorneys filed a federal civil rights case, laying out the sloppy and coercive police investigation and seeking more than $100 million. The lawsuit also alleged that one of Golubsky's motives for framing Lamont was because Rosie McIntyre had spurned Golubsky's advances. Years before the 1994 homicide, according to the lawsuit, Golubsky stopped Rosie McIntyre and her boyfriend, asking Rosie to get out of the car. Rosie says Golubsky told her to meet him at the police station the next day or he would arrest her boyfriend. This is just blatant crazy. Like, this is blatantly insanity. Okay? So you're going to sit up there and threaten people to go and meet you or do things with you, or you're going to lock up their sons or boyfriends and all of this? When she went to the station the next day, McIntyre says Golubsky forced her into an sex act. After that, Golubsky wanted a long-term sexual arrangement, but Rosie McIntyre dodged him by moving and changing her phone number. Setting up her son was Golubsky's revenge for Rosie's rejection. This is all so sad. Let me share a picture of Lamont McIntyre and his mother Rosie, as well as Mr. McGlowski, who helped to get him free. This is all nefarious. What do y'all think? This is all crazy. Just goes to show this is the kind of system that we have. Okay, but we're supposed to trust in it. But the investigator who broke the case doesn't agree with the alleged motive. Jim McCloskey says that Ruby Mitchell told the police the name Lamont. Golubsky simply wanted to find a black kid named Lamont, so called over to the juvenile division and got Lamont McIntyre. McCloskey wonders if Golubsky even remembered Rose McIntyre. He had so many black women on his list, she was just one of the countless many of them. Ruby Mitchell, the neighbor who originally pinned the crime on Lamont, still lives in Kansas City, Kansas, but she did not respond to a request for comment for an interview. McCloskey says she felt terrible about the McIntyre case and asked that her apology to Lamont, or asked that he give her apology to Lamont and Rosie. I don't want no apology. I'm sorry. It's a no for me. Now, Lamont McIntyre has been out of prison for a little over 4 years now. He's 46 years old, catching up on his life. He started a barber academy in Kansas City, Kansas called Headlines, and he did this with another exoneree. Okay, they founded their nonprofit, Miracle of Innocence. He and his family, including Rosie, had moved to Arizona, where he has a real estate company and a barbershop called Off the Top. He's learned social media, even though when he got out of prison, he couldn't believe how much everyone was into their phones. He posts positive messages on Facebook, inspirational and spiritual posts about being grateful and working out and eating right. He often uses the hashtag, be good to yourself. He says, I feel good, but I'm here for that. This is what he said on Facebook. He says, so every morning I walk around, I work out, and I have dialogue with God. Every morning I do this. Okay, so this is all so sad. This man lost all this time out of his life, decades, over 2 decades. How can he catch up on his life over 20 years is gone? Exactly. Greta says, I meant Ruby should be in jail with her no comment self. Right. But here's the thing. She was coerced, and threatened. So we could give her some leeway on that. But at the end of the day, honey, he couldn't have coerced me and threatened me. I mean, he could have done it, but it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked. I promise you that wouldn't have worked on me. And I'm not going to say why it wouldn't have worked, but I promise you it wouldn't have worked. Okay. You can't blackmail me. You can't coerce me into doing anything. Okay. I'm not built for that. I'm built different. That's all I'm saying. Whatever energy somebody brings to me, I'm going to bring the same to them, if not more so. I don't care who you are. But anyway, I digress. So with that all being said, let's talk about this prosecutor, Tara Moorhead, because she's been disbarred. Okay? She has been disbarred. Kansas prosecutor who framed innocent man surrenders law license and will soon be disbarred. So everyone please like and share. Now, Tara Moorhead, a longtime county and federal prosecutor who helped police frame at least one innocent man, there was probably many more, has agreed to surrender her law license and faces disbarment. Moorhead, who became notorious for skirting legal protections for defendants, agreed to surrender her law license as part of the agreement with the Kansas Board of Discipline of Attorneys. Okay, she's awaiting disbarment from the Kansas City Supreme Court. First of all, or the Kansas Supreme Court. My thing is she should be sent to prison. Why is she just getting disbarred? Like, that's nothing but a slap on the wrist. So you're going to take away her career. Okay, good. I get it. But she should be in prison for this. Okay, this is what ticks me off about stuff like this. I don't care that you take her license. She still has money. She's been doing this for decades. And so she's got all of this money, I'm sure, and she has other means of making an income. She shall be sent to prison. Okay, her and Golubsky. Now it goes on to say, Moorhead's conduct came under scrutiny during the exoneration of Lamont McIntyre, who was convicted of a double homicide when he was 17. Okay, so this is all so crazy. I'm going to skip down. I'm not going to read all of this. Now, Golubsky faces a federal trial this fall on charges that he violated the civil rights of several Black women, and in a separate case protected a KCK drug dealer who was running an sex trafficking operation for underage girls. This man was a whole thug, a whole kingpin, and he was working for the Kansas City police. He's currently on home arrest and was recently chided by a federal magistrate for violating his arrest conditions by going to a fast food place. Let me tell y'all something. The Kansas City police are still corrupt, in my opinion. Because do you all remember when I had, what was his name? I had the bishop on here, Bishop Caldwell. You all remember when I had Bishop Caldwell on my live? I've had him on twice. But Bishop Caldwell basically is an activist. And do you remember when he was breaking the story, him along with the Kansas City Defender, and you heard it here first when I was reporting on it, how they were finding these bodies, okay? These Black women coming up deceased. Do you all remember that on Prospect in Kansas City? On that street, they were being abducted from Prospect, and then these women were being found deceased, and they were alleging, the Black community was alleging that it was being done by a serial killer. Do you all remember that? I did TikToks on it and everything. And so then, when Bishop Caldwell was exposing this stuff, he told me that the police came to his place of business or his home, and they basically, I think they came to his church and threatened him, told him to stop talking about it, told him to stop saying it's serial killers and all this stuff. He also told me that there was dead bodies found at some vacant lot and stuff. Black folk, dead bodies. And they kept saying, the police that is, kept saying there was no serial killer. Now, why were they saying this? Because they were trying to cover it up. Another reason they didn't want to admit that it was a serial killer on the loose is because there was supposed to be like a dome or something being built in Kansas City that was supposed to generate a lot of money or something like that, a lot of revenue. And so they didn't want to stop people from coming and supporting. They didn't want to mess up the tourist attraction, is all of that. You all remember that? So they still have corrupt things going on with the Kansas City Police Department as far as I'm concerned. Okay, you're threatening a man of God, a church bishop who's out here trying to help the community, not being nefarious like they allege T.D. Jakes is, mind you, but out here really putting in work. They went and threatened him and told him to shut up and stop talking about it. But he didn't shut up and he didn't stop talking about it. Came on my show and talked about it some more. So this is still what they're doing. I want you all to pay attention. Okay, and then let's not forget that when they found the person who was committing these murders, who was abducting these Black women off of Prospect and then killing them, who was it? It was a white man. You all remember that? It was a white man. And then I found it very interesting because you also remember that I reported to you that when all of this happened and there was all this evidence in that house where the man lived and where he took these women that he did all these heinous things to and took their lives, they tore down the house. Now, I thought that was strange. Do you all remember how days later they had the house destroyed? Why would they do that? Isn't that a whole crime scene? Isn't there evidence? I mean, we saw them carrying out some of the evidence clearly, but why did they destroy the house? I just thought that was very interesting. But I digress. So Moorhead, and that's the judge, the prosecutor, the female prosecutor who was in on it, she was criticized in a U.S. Department of Justice investigation after a federal judge in 2017 tossed a defendant's conviction on drug charges. In a rare public admonishment, U.S. Judge Julie Robinson ruled that Moorhead had interfered with a defendant's Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial and found that Moorhead had substantially interfered with a defense witness's decision to testify in the case. So I want you all to pay attention. That was in 2017. That was in 2017 when she did that. And you mean to tell me she was allowed to continue to practice and be a whole prosecutor after that? A March 20 filing with the Kansas Supreme Court signed by Alice Walker, Deputy Disciplinary Administrator of the Kansas Board of Discipline for Attorneys, or of Attorneys, said the court asked that the court forego an April pre-hearing and a May formal hearing because Moorhead had agreed to surrender her law license. Okay, the disciplinary board recommended that the High Court accepted. The court approved the request and is now expected to issue a formal disbarment, which is standard practice under Kansas Supreme Court rules when an attorney surrenders their law license. The state board also told the High Court that Moorhead had been the subject of an investigation by the Office of Professional Responsibility for the U.S. Department of Justice, but hasn't said what they found. So this Karen was doing all of this for decades, her and Golubsky, okay? Her and Golubsky, and they got away with it. And now all they're going to do is simply just let her surrender her license. Like this really, stuff like this, let me tell y'all something. Stuff like this really ticks me off. And like I told you all before, this is why I can't report on this stuff every day. Because it raises my blood pressure. It just gets me boiling mad, okay, at the end of the day. Let's look at these thugs again. Not Lamont McIntyre, he's the victim, but these two thugs right here, Thug 1 and Thug 2. They did this to Black people for decades. That's what they did for decades. And there's plenty of more of them where they came from, okay? That's just a fact. Plenty of them where they came from at the end of the day. Oh, so crazy. Likes up, everyone. Please like and share. But let me continue. Now, former Kansas prosecutor surrenders law license after framing innocent Black man who spent years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. Because he was framed. They literally framed this man, okay? Just made up lies and all kind of BS. Detective Golubsky faces life in prison, though. Yeah, I hope he gets it. He faces life in prison when he stands trial later this year for allegedly violating the civil rights of several other Black women who claim that he coerced them into having sex by threatening to arrest their family members, like he'd allegedly done in the McIntyre case. Now think about that. He already had one person sent to prison for a double murder that they didn't even do. Double murders. And then now he's threatening these other people. What do you think these people are going to do? They're going to comply. I still wouldn't comply. You see, in my opinion, there's only one way to handle people like Golubsky. But I digress. So, this is just all so crazy. Now, later, Golubsky invited the woman. Now, here's the thing. Federal and prosecutors claim Golubsky raped 2 women and may have assaulted as many as 70 victims from 1998 to 2002. That's not even a long time. You are accused of doing these things to 70 victims in just a few span of those years. That's like 4 years. Okay, he did this under the threat of blackmail, leaving many women feeling they had no choice but to comply with his demands. McIntyre's mother, Rose McIntyre, was also a victim of Golubsky's alleged abuse of power. She said that she first crossed paths with Golubsky in the 1980s when he pulled her over with her boyfriend and concocted a pretext to take advantage of the woman. Later, Golubsky invited her to discuss the matter in his office where he allegedly forced her to perform oral on him, okay, or else he would arrest her boyfriend. Honey, I'm not even going to say what I'm thinking. I'm not even going to say what I'm thinking. Do y'all hear this? He forced this woman. Roddy said a serial rapist. Yes. Okay. Claudette called him a nasty, funky mutt. All right. So let me get this straight. He forced this woman to do oral on him. Let me tell you something. That's what you got teeth for, ladies. Ladies, that's what you have teeth for. Somebody try to force you to do something like that, bite it off. Okay? Bite it off. You'll be wishing you never tried it. You'll be wishing you never tried it because you wouldn't have nothing left. Okay? Please. This is all nefarious. Okay? This is all nefarious. But anyway, goes on to say that later he invited her to the office and had her do that or whatever. And then after the first encounter, he wanted to continue the abuse long term. And so he moved, but she moved and changed her phone number. Well, here's the thing. Now, this is what this leads me to believe. This is what this allows me to believe. Vince I Am said, I already know what you're thinking, Queen. Yeah, exactly. I ain't just thinking it. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Somebody try to make me do something like that, you're going to be missing that part. Okay? Because I got teeth and I put them to use. So let's see. Now, here's the thing. So they say that after that encounter, the initial encounter, he wanted her to continue the relationship. So that leads me to think that she must have been doing a good job. Now, if somebody's making you do something like that, the last thing you should do is a good job. Maybe she thought if she didn't do a good job, that, you know, he was going to go ahead with the threats. At the end of the day, that's exactly why I would have bitten it right off. Because if you bite it off, he's going to have, if he's missing his cucumber, if he's lost his eggplant, and after I bit it off, I'd have flushed it down a toilet. It's not getting reattached. And after that, well, guess what? At the end of the day, he wouldn't have time to be worried about setting anybody up at that point, okay? He wouldn't have time to even focus on that. He would not have time to even be focusing on that. This is all crazy. Greta said, no way, no how. This is horrible, Queen. It is. It absolutely is. Nessie said, I know that's right, Queen. Absolutely. Absolutely. See, sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but my mind is very active. So when I hear some of the nefarious things that some people do to other people, I say to myself, what would I have done in that situation? Or if anything like that ever was attempted to happen to me, what would I do? And then I write then and there, okay, consciously make a plan of what I would do if anything like that ever happens. You see, you have to expect the unexpected, and you have to plan for things to happen that are crazy. And I know that probably sounds crazy to some of y'all, but I'm here to tell you, at the end of the day, honey, mad as hell. Take a bite out of crime. Not take a bite out of crime. Monica said, take it away, Queen. Okay, yeah, absolutely. And he would have regretted that for the rest of his life. Please pay attention. Now, goes on to say that Golubsky used his badge to protect the guilty, frame the innocent, and serve his personal agenda, whether it was carrying out a vendetta or protecting the drug dealers who paid him. Okay, McIntyre expressed satisfaction when Moorhead surrendered her license, saying that when I was in my trial, she gave me a look, and I always see this look. She didn't know me, and I didn't know her, but this was my first time seeing her, and she would give me this look. Now I'm at peace. I'm at a place where I don't see this no more. This is closure for me because I know she can't do that to anybody else. They'd have tried that with me. I promise you on everything, they wouldn't have done it to nobody else. I'll take that how you want to. Ugh, this is all crazy. This is all crazy. So that all being said, I'm going to conclude this broadcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Okay, please like and share this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to click the notification bell and click the word all so you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. All right, and for those of you who follow the spiritual channel, oh yeah, I'll be on there. I will be on the spiritual channel at 2:30. For those of you who follow the spiritual channel, I'll be on there at 2:30. And for the members of the spiritual channel, I'm uploading something for you as well. Okay, so with that all been said, each one teach one. That's how we grow and thrive. Do something productive, constructive, but never destructive. And always remember, beloveds, to keep the Most High first in your lives. And also, please pay attention to the content on the spiritual channel, because I'm going to have Trivia Fridays tomorrow. Okay, we're going to have the trivia, and you never know what questions the Queen may ask. With that all being said, I love you all to life. And until next time, beloveds, I'll talk to you all again soon. Peace.
Hit him with that flavor. Soul all in my skin, God all in my blood.
Kings all in my circle, you touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen, why you hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans? I got dreams like King Luther, shed blood like Kunta. You ain't helping my people, I ain't got nothing to say to ya. I want all the smoke like hookah. Talking reparations, America won't be great until they give us compensation. I'm like, I'm the hottest right now.
That's
See
right.
a bunch of lames out here trying to jock on my style. They be doing too much. I'm the queen, it's too easy. It's like they all at Popeyes, how they be talking so greasy.
Real slick.
I just sit back and laugh while these haters get madder. So nefarious how they don't want my pockets with cheddar. I tell them they can do better. These snakes in the grass can leave a bite on your ass, cause y'all be trusting too fast. I got my foot on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threats. Running through every challenge like a relay, break no sweat. It's a cold game, so I got that blanket with me. Now that my people awaken, ain't no going to sleep. I do not play by my piece, this time I'm playing for keeps. You talking slick, but when I see you like them ends, we gon' meet. And I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood. Kings all in my circle, you touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen, why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood. Kings all in my circle, you touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen, why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got